Hey, let's finish that talk about club head basics. Welcome back to the McGolf Shop. Jim McCleary, most award certified club maker, club fitter, where we talk about club reviews, club repairs, and club fittings. If you would, please like, subscribe, swing, and hit that bell at the bottom there, and that way you'll get more of these videos when they drop. I did Golf Clubs Explained. It was the basic version, and it's going to be up here, okay? Now we're going to kind of get in that intermediate version. And we're going to do again club heads, club shafts, club grips, okay? As part of the club heads, we talked about the different, that we had cavity backs, we had muscle backs, perimeter rated or blades, right? That's what we called them. Now what's parts of the golf club head, parts of the golf club head. So let's go with that. So what we have here is a player's cavity back in basically its truest form, and then another cavity back that's, has a little more technology laid into it. And they both have the same kind of part or same kind of labels that you would want to attach to them. All right, we'll start from the beginning. The very insides of these guys is called the hosel. All right, the hosel, that's where the shaft intersects with the head. There's basically going to be two openings right now. There's a 330, a 355, and a 370 taper and parallel tip. That's what goes into them. Now in the day they used to have a wide variety. You used to hear stuff like 295 and things like that. That day is done. But in today's date, it's going to be 355 and 370. You're going to find the 355 more in the players type clubs, the blades, small players cavities, probably something like that. Whereas when you see something like this, in the game improvers or the super game improvers, and there's a part where they cross over, that it will be the parallel tips or the 370s. So that's the hosel. When you leave the hosel, you have offset. All right, offset. And the offset is the difference between the leading edge of the hosel and the beginning of the bottom of the face of the club. And that offset, that difference, which you see, difference between here and here, and the difference between there and there is quite different. And the offset is measured, well, it can be measured in anything, millimeters or very small inches. And the idea of offset is more offset means it helps a slicer more for again, we're staying basic because it's intermediate. And then when you get down into the bottom, this is called the sole of the club. That's the bottom of the club, where this is the top line of the club. The toe of the club, the heel of the club. Now they all have that, all right? Top line, toe, sole, all right? So you'll see that you'll hear stuff like, hey, this is a thin sole. Hey, that's a thick sole. Hey, that's a nice thin top line. Hey, that's a thicker top line. This has got if you look at it, if you were to look at these, do they have the same kind of, they have different ways of getting to a toe. This is a little bit more straight, where this guy has an appearance of, it curves down and then goes up, so it doesn't look as mechanical maybe. That's different. It's all preferential. These are just talking about what it is. That is the face of a club. That is the cavity of a club. All right. These are called score lines, all right, score lines, or grooves. Grooves are a big thing with wedges, right? There is regulation upon regulation of how grooves are supposed to be in a certain loft on down. That's a different topic, all right? So those are irons. Again, when we talk about the irons, the smaller the number, the further it goes, till you get to the letters, and it's pitch, attack, or approach, sand, lob, and then there's another lob. We'll call it a high lob or whatever you want to call it. Or another lob 2, whatever, lob squared. Let's make it up because nobody has one yet. All right, and so that's the irons, right? In woods, it's pretty much about the same thing, except in hosels. When you have the ones with hosels, this will be the hosel. Now they basically have 2 or 3 types of sizes. You'll have 335, 350, and quite possibly in the 400 range. Those don't show up very much anymore, but they do exist, so I'm just letting you know. When you normally have a hosel like that, that means it's not adjustable, right? Not adjustable. When you see a club head that looks like this, so that's notched, that means that there's a adapter that has to go in it. They all look a little, each manufacturer has their own thing, but they're normally cut off about that spot and they integrate into the hosel that way. Typically, then the adapter pieces are basically taking the place of the hosel, and then that makes them adjustable. Now again, you have the face, you have the toe, you have the heel, you have the sole, which is obviously much bigger, and now instead of a top line, you have a crown. All right, you have a crown. The crowns mostly are made out of a woven Kevlar or woven graphite of some variety. Some stay with the titanium, but the idea is it gives it the appearance. And sometimes you'll see an alignment line. I don't know if you can see that in there or not. There's normally an alignment aid, mostly. Not every time, but mostly. In some cases, you'll see this. This is a slider. It's called a movable weight. Some people have them going this way. Some people go up and down. These guys go outside the radius. It's, again, up to the manufacturer. The idea is to help you close or keep open, basically meet the ball square when you're swinging. But again, it's just basic parts of the club. Now, you can have some of the tricks of the trade on this one is that you'll see a club that sets a little bit closed at address, right? And that's, again, to help the guy that can't get the club closed at impact. And players might even actually set a little open because they have a tendency to over-rotate. You'll hear the idea of a player's head, all right? A player's head means normally that it would be very, very square at address, maybe even a little bit open. Sometimes even the manufacturers make them smaller at address because sometimes players prefer it smaller. And that's purely, again, purely up to the manufacturer. Not good, bad, or in between. It's just the description. So you get the toe, the heel, the sole, the crown, the face, the hosel, or where the adapter goes, and there's woods. Same thing goes in for hybrids and wedges and, you know, every other club that's out there. They all have that. Now, as we talked about in shafts, there was two kinds of shafts. There's a steel shaft and a graphite shaft. We're going to talk about the graphite shaft first, okay? So this is a graphite shaft. Now, the idea of graphite is it provides you something that is lighter. It used to have the stigma attached to it that it was always more flexible. Well, the way that these are made, there's two ways that the graphite shaft is made. It's called sheet wrapping or filament winding. All right, and they both get you to the same spot. They make you a graphite shaft. Now, there'll be different feels, but that is we're going to touch into the very next video. They do sheet wrapping, and what sheet wrapping is just that. They have strands of graphite that are laid out on what's called pre-peg. It's basically a sheet of graphite, and they layer the strands in certain fashions in order to give you these profiles. So what are some of the important parts of a shaft? Well, you have the butt section, you have the mid section, you have the tip section. And as we talked about the tip section in drivers, right, 335, 350, 400. Stereotypically, 335 is going to be where it's at. The butt end is going to be yet another manufacturer's designation. Typically, you know, the .60 is where we want to be. However, they can go up or they can go down, and it's purely based on the designation. But when you're going to select grips, and you know that, you can tell the golfer whether or not the grip size is going to change on them, that kind of stuff. The other important idea is the total weight of the club, all right, the total weight of the club. Now, graphite has a myriad of selective weights. It can get into the 30 gram, like I showed you in the what was it, the Cleveland, right? The Cleveland and Srixon video reviews. The Miyazaki, hopefully I said that right this time, shaft is in the 30 gram range. Well, where a lot of manufacturers have been able to get into the 40 gram range, and then you see 40, 50, 60, 70, and some 80 gram shafts. You don't really see steel in woods any longer because, well, graphite's just basically killed it for them. I don't even know if they exist anymore. I imagine they're out there, but it's very, very rare to find something that will be like that. The other one is the profile and how to profile the shaft. Now, you're going to have to take this one from the manufacturers, and they'll tell you, high launch, low spin, low launch, low spin, mid launch, all these different characteristics, and it's based on a standard issue type of golfer. Now, you may not be standard issue kind of golfer, and that is why the fitting is so important. Because there may be some attributes, you may be an average golfer, but you may have some above average golfer tendencies, and that's the reason why the shaft is so important. All right, the shaft is not the engine, it is the transmission of the golf club. You, my friend, are the engine. So that's how these get made. Right now, when we go to the next one, we'll get a little bit more techy about that. So when we talked about graphite and steel, we really need to segregate it into woods and irons now, because 95, 98, 99% of all the stuff you're going to see in woods, fairway woods, and quite possibly hybrids and driving irons, right, those top end stuff is going to be made out of graphite. Where steel has a massive foothold is still in the irons. Why is that? Because in the irons, it's very, very consistent. It's very, very traditional. It's very, very easy to do, right? So what's the difference in steel? Okay, in steel, there's basically two kinds of steel type shafts. There is a stepless shaft, which basically runs with these guys. It's a stepless shaft, i.e. there's no indentations, no steps going down. And then there's the stepped shaft, and which is this guy. And as you notice, you see each little step here, those little shoulders are called steps. And those shoulders influence the flex of the club, how it flexes, where it flexes. This is basically done on the inside. That's how I can tell you that. And now steel has really done steel was really losing ground to graphite because it didn't have very many options. However, now you can see, particularly in this manufacturer, you can find 80, 90, 105, 120, 130. Another manufacturer is about the same. You can see 80s, 95s, 105s, 110s, that kind of stuff. So the technology, the capability of manufacturing has really, really changed in order to fit what's coming out in clubhead styles and the way the golfer plays. So, don't think that just because it's standard weight, you've got to have that. That's fitting. However, that's the way you can look at that. Again, you still have the tip, you have the midsection, you have the butt, and the tip, again, is going to be 370, 355, and the butt, again, is left up to the design of the manufacturer. And again, these have profiles as well. For the guy that wants that low controlled and just maybe a little bit up and down, or a guy that wants to be a high ball hitter, there's all kinds of profiles out there for you. Which leads us into the graphite section of iron shafts, right? Now again, graphite has a lot of different attributes and a lot of different styles and models, right? They can do a lot of different things because of the way that you can lay the graphites, or even filament wind the graphites, or even have some combination of the two. The one thing that sets graphite and steel apart is basically paint. All right. Well, the way that it can look while it's sitting in your bag is paint, where you can look like this guy. It gives it the baseball bat, or even old-timey type thing. If you wanted a wood look, I think it's kind of cool. Or if you want to fool your buddies. And you see that? And this is a graphite shaft, and it's called ion coating. And the ion coating gives it that steel look, and it's just another type of a paint job. It gives it a different appearance. It's no different than if you're going to buy a car and you prefer red over blue or white or whatever. And that's what these are all about. Again, the manufacturing processes are the same, but there's just a lot to choose from, as you can tell back here. Now, in the iron category, there's also wedge shafts. Wedge shafts have become a thing here as of late, And why not? You know, wedges are becoming very specific as well with the way the grooves are formed, the way the bounces are formed, the way that the soles are formed. So why wouldn't you do that? All right, finally is the grip. Just like there is different shaft combinations, different iron combinations, there's also different grips, right? We talked about that there was rubber and there was synthetic. Again, we had the rubber grip, all right, the rubber grip. I didn't get to show you a synthetic grip, but there you go, synthetic grip. And the synthetic grips are typically, you know, they play softer. That's the idea. Is they reduce a little bit more vibration than the rubber grip, because the rubber grips tend to transmit feel, where some of the synthetic grips tend to reduce the transmission of the feel. So it makes things feel softer. So if you're a guy that has a very sensitive touch, might have some arthritis, you might want to consider a synthetic grip. Now the idea of grips, they come in sizes. They got ladies, men's undersize, standard, oversized, and upwards of jumbo. And then there's other companies that have taken that a step farther. So let's start at the very beginning. So we can have basically a standard grip, which is this is one of your more traditional style grips. All right. Then you can get into a multi-compound type grip, where you see the cord on one side and the rubber on the other, but multi-compound. Then you get into the synthetic, and this just happens to be a wrap where there's other styles and shapes and colors for that matter. And here we have a newcomer in terms of grip history is this guy. All right, now what these are extraordinarily large grips, all right? This is their junior grip, and their junior grip is slightly larger than most people's jumbo grips. I mean, if I was to, I'd have to go all the way, set this thing deep in my hand just to get it to fit. If I put it in there, look at all that space back in there. And the same thing there, right? It's a good feeling grip to be sure, and it's made for certain applications, but what I'm trying to drive across is that there are a ton of options out there, and you should explore them with your fitter. Okay, a little bit more important stuff for this is that they have what's called core sizes, all right? And the core size will determine, based on what you put it on the butt of the club, how big this guy truly turns out to be. And again, that would be the guy putting on the grips job, or if you're trying to figure it out, you know, standard core on the standard club or standard butt will make a standard grip. If one's bigger or smaller than the other, you're going to have a slight change size. So you might need to add a layer of tape. You might have to stretch a little bit more. All right, so the idea was to kind of keep you more informed about, you know, when you're talking terminology, when you want to talk to somebody, how do so your guys are talking the same language. When you talk soles, top lines, offsets, hosel sizes, types of graphite, the weights and stuff like that. That's what this one was all about. So if you have any questions or you want to talk about a particular topic on the next one of these, and it's a three-parter, then put them down in the show notes. And as always, let's hear scores go low.